Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. You've ever been curious about what occurs when one of Hollywood's favorite actors enters what is initially a warm interview, only to be blindsided by the host? What happened during that evening wasn't only cringeworthy television, it was a dramatic betrayal that left the entire studio completely stunned. Stay tuned because you won't believe what really went down behind the scenes. Before we dive in on this explosive scene, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts down below in the comments. What do you really think happened when the cameras were off? The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon was to be Johnny Depp's return platform. After years of fighting legal tempests and unforgiving public criticism, this was to be his resplendent reemergence onto mainstream television. The hype spoke of a lighthearted, pleasant chat, some humor over his quirky performances, and the easy affability Jimmy's familiar with. But what transpired was far from what anyone had anticipated. Johnny strode into the studio with his trademark swagger, worn leather jacket, rings glinting just so. The crowd erupted in applause, the real enthusiasm catching even Johnny somewhat off guard. He crooked that smile, waved warmly, and settled into the guest seat like a seasoned pro with years of talk show cred under his belt. Jimmy got the party started with his customary zeal, beaming from ear to ear and clapping along with the audience. "Johnny Depp, everyone!" "Johnny Depp," he shouted, his voice filled with that characteristic enthusiasm that has earned him TV staple status. The band performed, the crowd applauded, all was just as normal as could be for those initial minutes. Johnny straightened his jacket, smoothed his hair, and leaned back with confidence. "Great to be here, man." "Really great," Jimmy announced, rumpling his notes, but not quite masking his enthusiasm. "I've been wanting to have you on the show for eternity." "You look great, as always." Johnny smiled that inscrutable smile, a glimmer of warmth in his eyes. "Thanks for inviting me, Jimmy. Good to be here." The conversation began well, Jimmy inquiring about Johnny's new indie movie, the one that was hot with the festival crowds. Johnny rhapsodized about the director's vision and the cooperative atmosphere on set. His eyes sparkled when he discussed returning to storytelling, the clean art of acting free from the shadow of giant studios looming over it all. "You know what I love about this project?" Johnny leaned forward, sincere. "It's a reminder of why I went into the whole business in the first place. It's about the story, about reaching out to people through the characters we create." Jimmy nodded in agreement, but something didn't feel right. The familiar, effervescent energy felt forced, more or less rehearsed. His questions sounded well thought out, as if he was leading to something. Johnny didn't pick up on it initially, or perhaps he was too much of a pro to reveal it. And then came the moment every interviewee knows is around the corner. The transition. Talking about bonding, Jimmy's tone shifted slightly, a subtle yet unmistakable signal. "I have to ask," Jimmy said diplomatically, "and if you don't mind, I'm wondering if you'd be okay with me bringing this up. But a lot of people have been asking about your private life recently." For a fleeting moment, Johnny's smile faltered. His fingertips drummed against his knee. Tension filled the air, and the crowd breathed expectantly, anticipating what was to come. Johnny's fingertips drummed softly against the armrest, a small gesture that most would overlook, yet one that should have been a warning sign to Jimmy. Then Jimmy interrupted the silence, attempting nonchalance, but obviously seeking words. "Your private life. Well, you understand all the things that have been in the headlines. The court cases, He flapped his hand evasively, as if summoning the appropriate words from a vacuum. "Everybody wants to know how you're coping with all of that." The studio audience fell noticeably silent. This wasn't the relaxed conversation anyone had RSVP'd for. Even occasional viewers could sense the tension building, heavy-ending the air between the two men. Johnny sat back, his face closing, eyes narrowing. "I figured we were going to discuss the movie," he said, his voice steady, but with a biting edge it hadn't previously held. Jimmy laughed, but it was hollow, strained. Sure, but you understand, don't you? People want to know the complete Johnny Depp story, not the movie part. You've done so much, and I think people would appreciate your honesty." Johnny recognized it then. This was not the respectful, friendly chat he had been assured of. His jaw rigidified just a little, nearly imperceptible to everyone, but unmistakable to those who knew him. When he replied, his voice fell low, even, and icy. "What exactly are you asking me, Jimmy?" Jimmy fidgeted with his note cards uncomfortably, a tiny tell that revealed his own awkwardness at where this was headed. But he didn't back down. If anything, he pushed more aggressively. "I'm just saying, there's been a lot of discussion about your conduct, your dependability. Folks wonder if you're the same guy who gave us Jack Sparrow and all those other unforgettable players. They ask themselves, are you okay?" The words hung heavy between them like a gauntlet thrown. Johnny gazed at Jimmy, the wheels turning behind those burning dark eyes. This was a friend, one who had always stood by him in the past. And yet here he was, live on national television, suggesting that Johnny was not of sound mind, questioning his professional reputation. "Are you being serious at the moment?" Johnny spoke almost inaudibly, but his tone was heavy, with more weight than if he'd yelled. Jimmy's self-assured front cracked for an instant. He appeared to be aware that he had overstepped, but rather than backing off, he intensified his position. "Listen, I'm not coming at you. I'm simply asking questions that people want to know. That's what we do here. We have honest conversations." Johnny straightened up abruptly, recharging the whole atmosphere of the studio. "This isn't fun anymore. This isn't entertainment. This is personal." Jimmy's statement lingered in the strained silence. "Real conversations," Johnny spoke slowly, low and menacing. "Is that what you call ambushing someone who trusted you enough to come on your show?" Jimmy's face burned bright red, but he persisted with the desperate determination of a man who'd come too far to turn back now. "I'm not ambushing you, Johnny. I'm just offering you an opportunity to speak to the elephant in the room. Your fans have a right to hear from you." Johnny jumped up suddenly, the motion so swift and sudden that Jimmy jumped back. The audience was completely still. This wasn't an interview anymore. As the tension reached boiling point, everyone in the Tonight Show audience realized this was no longer the lighthearted romp they'd anticipated. What was happening was naked, uncensored drama being performed live, and no one quite knew what to do with it. "Sit down, Johnny!" Jimmy urged, trying to inject some humor, but his voice sounded strained and desperate. "Come on, we're just talking here. Just having a conversation between friends." Johnny's laugh cut through the room, sharp and bitter. "Friends. Friends don't blindside each other on national television. Friends don't promise one thing and then deliver something completely different. Friends don't turn someone's pain into show content." Jimmy held up his hands in a soothing gesture, but it only appeared to feed Johnny's rage. "Look, I understand you're angry," Jimmy said, "but that's what late-night television is all about. Discussing real stuff, addressing what people are going through in their lives." "What's happening in my life?" Johnny's voice rose for the first time since the confrontation began. "I'm trying to rebuild my career, my reputation, and my peace of mind after years of having my private business dragged through the mud by people who claim to care." The cameras continued to roll, taking in every tense second of what was quickly some of the most cringe-worthy television anyone had witnessed in years. Jimmy's producers were likely yelling in his earpiece, but he plowed ahead, focused on whatever script he was following. And that's why people need to hear from you, Jimmy continued. They need to be sure you're owning up, that you're learning from your errors, that you're the man they want to back. Johnny's eyes snapped with venom. Owning up? Learning from errors? What errors exactly, Jimmy? I'd love for you to elaborate on what you believe I need to own up to. Jimmy shifted uncomfortably in his chair, aware he'd trapped himself. Well, you see, the entire thing about your personal life, the court cases, the rumors about the way you've conducted yourself on movie sets, stories. Johnny spoke with contempt dripping from his voice. Stories? Stories from folks who weren't present, published by media outlets that never even made an attempt to establish facts, parroted by hosts more interested in scandal than fact. The studio tension was overbearing. Members of the audience gave each other wide-eyed stares, wondering whether they should be alarmed or thrilled to see what amounted to television history being made. Several took out phones already filming, knowing this would be trending within hours. Jimmy's desperation was now unmistakable. I'm trying to assist you here, he said. This is your opportunity to frame your own narrative, to tell your own side of things. My side of the story? Johnny's voice grew louder, his composure cracking. My side of the story is that I'm a human being who's been through hell and back, someone whose name has been dragged through every tabloid and gossip site on the planet, someone who's lost roles and opportunities because of lies and speculation. Jimmy attempted to cut him off, but Johnny had more to say. My side of this is that I came here this evening thinking that I could trust you, because I thought we had enough history that you wouldn't play a trick like this. Jimmy hesitated. Johnny, please. Jimmy's voice grew softer, and his tone became almost agonized as he pleaded. I'm not your enemy here, Johnny. I'm trying to provide you with a platform in order to clear the air. Johnny laughed, but there was no laughter in it. Clear the air? Fine. Let's clear the air. The air is that you invited me here under false pretenses. The air is that you're making my personal struggles into entertainment for your readership. The air is that you're no better than any other vulture in this industry. Those words struck Jimmy like a blow to the stomach. You could watch him deflate before your very eyes. The devastating acknowledgement of how so terribly he had underestimated the situation dawning on him. But instead of backing down, apologizing, or trying to repair the damage, Jimmy made the worst mistake possible. I think you're overreacting, he said. This is what interviews are about. This is what people expect when they tune in to see Johnny Depp. That was it. That was the moment Johnny Depp's legendary patience snapped. Overreacting! Johnny's voice thundered across the studio with a force that stilled them all. You think I'm overreacting to being ambushed by a person I thought of as a friend? Jimmy opened his mouth, but Johnny forestalled him with a curt wave, absolute and unambiguous. You know what, Jimmy? You're right about one thing. People do expect something when they tune in to see Johnny Depp. They expect authenticity. They expect respect. They expect someone who won't sell them out for a few extra ratings. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the band froze, unsure if they should play anything to break the suffocating tension. Johnny turned back and addressed the camera directly, talking to the people at home, not to the host who had betrayed him. Thank you for your years of support. Thank you for cutting through all the noise and for remembering there's a human being behind all the headlines. And thank you for recognizing some lines shouldn't be crossed, even in the name of entertainment. Then he confronted Jimmy once more. The expression in his eyes was one that would torment the host for years. It wasn't anger anymore. It was a profound disappointment, worse than anger. As for you, Jimmy, Johnny said, his tone unnervingly level, I hope whatever you imagined you were going to get done here was worth it. I hope the extra clicks and social media attention from this debacle were worth ending whatever friendship we did have. Jimmy went white. The bravado and confidence that had carried him along were extinguished in a flash. He resembled a man who'd just caught himself making the worst decision of his professional life. Johnny, wait. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Jimmy babbled. But even his own words sounded unrealistic. I never intended for things to go this far. I wanted us to have an honest discussion about everything. Johnny arched an eyebrow in incredulity. An honest conversation? Is this what you refer to as lying to my publicist about what you'd be discussing? Is this what you refer to as saying you'd give me a light interview about my movie and then proceeding to question me about my personal life? The crowd sat in disbelief, watching a moment of unvarnished, uncensored truth play out before their eyes on live TV. A moment no one would ever forget anytime soon. This was really a first in late-night television history. This wasn't scripted bit or staged drama for the purposes of entertainment. No, this was an actual friendship imploding live on television. Audiences that had tuned in, anticipating lighthearted laughter and celebrity repartee. I was trying to help you, Jimmy protested. But even he sounded insincere, like he knew the alibi was flimsy. I figured if we tackled everything straight out, we could get past it. Johnny wagged his head back and forth slowly, a hint of pity in his expression. You figured you could catch me off guard, ambush me, get a confession, make me crack on your program, and bestow that viral moment everybody would be discussing on the commute to work. I didn't... Jimmy began to interrupt, but Johnny held up a firm hand, silencing him. Let me finish. His tone was soothing, but inflected with an irrepressible authority. You believed you could leverage my sorrow, my hardship, for your benefit. You thought that you could leverage whatever trust remained between us to get something out of me that other people could not. Jimmy gazed wildly around, like he was hunting for a lifeline. His producers must have been shouting at him in his earpiece, but it was too late. There was no going back. Worst part, Johnny went on, isn't that you attempted to ambush me. It's that you sit there looking like you were doing me a favor, being noble about cornering me in front of an audience and insisting I explain my right to live to your fans. Jimmy attempted to cut in. I never asked you to explain anything. Johnny's voice snapped back hard and cold. Weakly, didn't you? When you questioned my reliability, my state of mind, my professionalism, what exactly were you asking me to do when you dredged up every tabloid tale and gossip about me throughout the years? What response did you expect? Jimmy parted his lips, but no words escaped. Quick-witted and glib, he was now speechless, confronted with Johnny's raw, righteous indignation. You know what is really tragic, Jimmy? Johnny spoke, his voice falling to soft, nearly conversational. I actually respected you. I thought you were one of us. Different from the rest. I thought you knew where the line was between entertainment and exploitation. The ensuing silence was oppressive. You could hear the soft buzzing of studio lights, the hum of the air conditioner, and the held breath of hundreds of people watching a momentous, unscripted moment that would be etched in memories for decades. I was wrong, Johnny stated matter-of-factly. And that's my fault for believing someone who obviously cares more about ratings than relationships. He started to move away from his chair, towards the stage's edge. Johnny! Don't go like this! Jimmy yelled, desperation creeping into his tone. We can work through this. We can talk. We can make it right. Johnny halted, looking over his shoulder for a final time. His tone was one of pain, greater than all the rage preceding it. Repair this, Jimmy. You can't repair trust once it's lost. You can't retract words after they're uttered. You can't reverse the decision you made to prioritize ratings over friendship. It's your show at the expense of our friendship, Jimmy conceded, his tone at last bearing authentic regret for the very first time since the argument had started. I did something awful, and I apologize. Johnny nodded slowly. You did make a mistake, he said softly, and your apology could be meaningful if it had come prior to spending the last 10 minutes doubling down on that mistake rather than taking responsibility for it. He looked out at the audience, the crowd who had shown up looking for a good night, but instead got a raw lesson in how fast respect can disappear and relationships can implode. Thanks for coming tonight, everyone, Johnny told them directly. Sorry your night was hijacked by whatever this was intended to be. And then he shot Jimmy one final look. Next time you're looking to ambush someone for content, try someone who hasn't already been through enough. Maybe someone who doesn't think you're a friend. And with that, Johnny Depp strode off the Tonight Show stage, leaving a host who had just learned the hardest lesson of his career. An audience that had just seen television history unfold. And a friendship that would never get back on track. The cameras didn't stop rolling as Jimmy sat stiff in his chair, looking at the vacant space where Johnny had been. The reality of his disastrous misjudgment finally dawning. The band refused to play him out. The crowd didn't applaud. There was nothing but silence. And the devastating reality that some mistakes cannot be undone. So, in your opinion, do you think really pushed Jimmy into making such a self-destructive decision that night? Pressure from network bosses, a ratings-grabbing ploy, or something even more profound? Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments section below. I'd love to hear it. What do you think was actually behind this dramatic breach of trust?